any opposition. I will. That is what a king must do.
Ganondorf is a man of many titles, the great king of evil, the demon king, the manifestation of demise itself. He's persistent, strategic, strong, cool, and smart, funny, cute, and always inevitable. Hey, I'm Guy So Sly, and after finally finishing my over 300-hour playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom, I can confidently say that the Ganondorf in that game has cemented him as one of the best incarnations of the character. It made me think, damn dude, I wish I could play as him. So you know what? That's what I'm gonna figure out how to do. And in the process, ask myself, what are all the different playable versions of Ganondorf, and which one is the best? Few things before I get into it. I'll be talking about both Ganon and Ganondorf. I know they're technically different characters, but I'm choosing to treat them as one for the sake of the video. And I'll be judging each playable version based on the things that I feel are the most important when transitioning Ganondorf from the final boss to a playable character. So this is all entirely reflective of my own personal preference. Also, only officially licensed games, there are some fucking fantastic fan-made versions of Ganondorf that, in my opinion, represent the ideal way that he should be designed, but I won't be covering those, at least not here. And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like me to cover next, feel free to leave a comment, be sure to subscribe, fucking do all that other stuff, and yeah, cool. The very first playable appearance of Ganondorf in any game ever is in Super Smash Bros. Melee, almost a decade and a half after his debut as Ganon in Zelda for the NES. But here's the super funny thing about Ganondorf in Melee. He's Captain Falcon. Straight up, all of Ganondorf's moves are just Captain Falcon's. Infamously, Sakurai had just enough time to implement one more character, and due to Captain Falcon and Ganondorf having similar proportions, Sakurai was just like, Ganondorf was the last character added to Melee in an effort to expand the roster while conserving time, and it shows. Literally, they grabbed the Ganondorf model from the Space World 2000 GameCube tech demo and reused it for Melee. So what are the few key differences between Ganondorf and Captain Falcon? And most importantly, do these differences make Ganondorf an enjoyable character to play? Well, Ganon is taller, giving him better reach, and being heavier means theoretically he lives longer, but this comes at the cost of reduced mobility with his slower movement speed and worse recovery, making him much more vulnerable to getting his ass comboed and outplayed by projectiles spam. Overall, Ganondorf in Melee is a fairly decent clone, though he suffers from some pretty hefty drawbacks in an attempt to make his playstyle more distinguishable. Going into this, I was expecting to put him in C tier due to the lack of originality, but in terms of having actual fun, I'm content with how he is in this game. Hell, I'm happy we even got him in the first place. We almost didn't. Captain Falcon's fun, and that kind of automatically makes Ganondorf a bit fun too, even with his weaknesses. B tier. I'm just gonna say it already, D tier. Brawl in general is so much slower than Melee, and for an already slow and heavy character, Ganondorf just suffers a lot. His recovery is worse, with Wizard's Foot no longer restoring his double jump, and all of his moves just being extra slow. And on top of all that, for some odd reason, he was nerfed to oblivion. The official tier list puts him in dead last, and he is often considered the worst character in Smash history. You can legitimately feel how terrible he is to play. The only good things I can say are A, he finally got some new moves to further separate him from Captain Falcon, like Flame Choke, which thematically fits him better, and B, I personally like the Twilight Princess design over the Ocarina of Time one, but yeah, overall, he sucks. I'm not gonna linger on it. Ganondorf's first playable appearance outside of Smash. These games are all about fulfilling a certain kind of power fantasy, the one-man army. And here's the cool thing about Ganondorf here, he actually has two different weapons / playstyles, so for that reason, I'll be ranking both of these individually. First off, the Dual Greatswords. The Greatswords are legitimately in the top 5 strongest weapons in the game, and as a result, make Ganondorf one of the best, most satisfying to play characters. Warriors. It just does everything so well, making it an incredibly safe choice, but does all that really contribute to its fun factor? 100%. First off, its damage output is insane. His C1 is a meat grinder for whatever is in front of him, and it just absolutely juggles everything in its reach like it's fucking Cirque du Soleil. And his C6, while it takes some time to set up, just absolutely violates everything within eyesight. It's an absolutely nuclear combo, and it's so fun to see waves of enemies just fly through the air and disintegrate. One of my favorite things about this weapon is that a lot of Ganon's weird ass magic pops up a lot, something I really associate Ganondorf with. It really feels like you're controlling this great magician who's just using these blades as a vessel for his weird wacky warlock bullshit. It's a weapon that can do basically everything incredibly well, insane damage, insane range, shreds through bosses, visually pleasing, it's crazy OP, and that translates to a good fun time. The only downside is it makes him slow, but like everything else makes up for it. And most importantly, they're a blast to mess around with. Legitimately, I believe this playstyle for Ganondorf deserves to be S tier. So while Ganondorf is known for his skilled swordsmanship, there's another weapon in his arsenal where he may be even more formidable: his signature Trident. The very first weapon we ever see him wield in the entire series. So you know that thing in Dragon Ball when Piccolo takes off his weighted clothes, and that's when you know someone's about to get their ass beat? That's essentially Ganondorf's playstyle here. Seriously, I was so caught off guard how fast this motherfucker throws out moves now that he doesn't have to drag his swords around. The Trident shifts his playstyle from this lumbering powerhouse into this dynamic and swift instrument of death. It infuses his attacks with a flair that is as satisfying to execute as it is to watch. He flips, dives, and crashes down on enemies. The Trident is a great choice if you like fast-paced gameplay, which I certainly do. There's only a few things that are keeping this from being another S tier for me though. This weapon does not have a whole lot of utility. Yeah, it's fast and it can lunge you forward a good distance, making engaging easier, but it doesn't really have that much else going for it. Doesn't mean it's not fun, but it's a bit hard to play when you know in the back of your mind that the swords overshadow the Trident in pretty much every single way. Still, it's a classic Ganon weapon, and they really did do it justice with how good it looks and feels to play. The kind of movement that the Trident introduces sort of defies what you typically expect from a giant man like Ganondorf, and that actually introduces an element of fun that is really unique for his character. So for all that, A tier. So there is one more incarnation of Ganon in this game that is a very dramatic departure from pretty much everything else we've seen so far. Beast Ganon. Beast Ganon is supposed to emphasize raw power and total domination, and you can definitely feel that as you literally deal damage just by walking over enemies. Beast Ganon's actual attacks are a bit limited though. You can do a series of ground slams and follow them up with some energy blasts, and that's pretty much what you'll be doing for the majority of the time. There's certain pickups called boss attack items that drop from other boss monsters. They give you a special item attack like hurling a giant fireball forward. For his focused spirit attack, he pulls another trident out of his asshole and flings that forward. And yeah, Beast Ganon. This game mode can definitely feel a bit gimmicky at times rather than something a bit more realized. Mowing down literally thousands of enemies all in a few minutes can be very entertaining, but the novelty of it all does fade away pretty quick. Basically, compared to other versions of Ganondorf, it's a bit less interactive, but you do get to play from the experience of what is basically the Zelda universe's version of a kaiju. So I think it's fine if I put Beast Ganon right below Melee Ganondorf. Lower B tier. Seriously, what the fuck did they do to you, man? Okay, besides that, visually they did add a giant scar in the center of his chest, a physical reminder of what they did to him in the last Smash. In terms of gameplay, Ganondorf in Smash 4 is almost indistinguishable from Ganondorf in Brawl in terms of how you play him. I mean, he got some slight buffs, okay, but he still has some of the slowest mobility in the game by far. With how little they changed him and how much they fucked up his face, you'd probably figure that I'd put him in D tier, right? Well, yeah, but there's just one thing. Custom moves. Custom moves are a really interesting mechanic here in Smash 4. So custom moves usually change only a few things about a character's special attacks, usually the timing or the range or how slow or fast something will move. Warlock Punch can become Warlock Thrust, coming out faster but dealing less damage. Flame Choke might become Flame Wave, where instead of choke slamming someone, you shoot him off into the air. But there's a few creative ones that I do want to highlight. One example I like is Flame Chain, where he projects this dark orb that repeatedly deals damage rather than just a grab. Wizard's Dropkick kick is another good one I found to be pretty effective, where you jump a bit to get some more height for your kick, and you can actually replace Warlock Punch with Warlock Blade, where he stabs someone with a Sword of Six Sages. While a lot of these are definitely interesting, they're not the most practical. Their drawbacks just aren't worth it, especially the ones that make Ganondorf even slower than he already is. So yeah, it's an interesting concept that may be worth revisiting in some future Smash game. For now though, it's just not engaging enough for me to rank him any higher than C tier. Ganondorf in Smash Ultimate. Appearance-wise, they went back to the Ocarina of Time design, except god damn, they really bulked him up here. Unlike Smash 4, where they didn't really touch his kit at all, Ganondorf actually got some new additions to his moveset. Most notably, he now whips that giant fucking sword out. Hey, remember that? I actually find it a bit odd that they're still pulling shit from a tech demo from almost 2.5 decades ago, but whatever. Even with the buffs he got in this game, he's still the same fat and slow character he's been since Brawl. His neutral game is still ass, making Ganondorf's life way worse. In terms of game feel, I admit he does feel better than he did in Brawl or Wii U. He's definitely a bit more responsive, so I guess that's pretty cool. I definitely don't think he should be on the same tier as Melee Ganondorf though, so maybe upper C tier, C+, yeah. And that's it for all the Smash games, which I gotta say, not a good look for the guy. I think the words that would best describe Ganondorf in Smash is missed opportunity. Being tied to Captain Falcon at the beginning of all of this turned out to be more of a curse than a blessing, but I can't get hung up on what could have been, so with that, let's move on to the next and final playable Ganon. We are so back. Unlocking Calamity Ganon in this game is such a pain in the ass, but it is so worth it. And I gotta get this out of the way real quick. This dude is fucking huge. Seriously, he doesn't even fit under the doorway. He also has a large, slow move pool that takes some time to get used to, but once you get a grasp of it, it's really fun. So the whole unique thing about his playstyle is that throughout your attacks, you leave behind these little orbs of malice. By absorbing these, you fill up your malice gauge, and once that's full, you can enter Ganon's Calamity form. Now this form is fucking nuts, as every single one of your attacks forces out the enemy weak point gauge, which is kind of like breaking posture in Sekiro. The whole goal in fighting bosses in this game is to reveal and exploit their weak point gauge, so this form is really helpful with that. One of the things I really like about Calamity Ganon are his visuals. There's a lot of body transformation, with attacks ranging from whipping an arm flail to firing out of a hand cannon to even growing wings and smashing down onto enemies. The whole visual diversity is really fun and adds a lot to the experience of playing as one of the more unconventional final bosses in the Zelda series. But I will say, again, his size is kind of his downfall here. Some of the maps are really thin, tight corridors, and his giant fucking body makes repositioning the camera a pain in the ass every now and then. I do wish they made him a bit smaller, like maybe 15% smaller? I don't know. Small nitpick aside, he's a very fun character, really unique from everything else we've seen so far, and this time he actually has the gameplay to back it up. So for all that, I'd say upper A tier. So that's it. Here's the complete final tier list if you want to pause and take a look. Overall, I think this list is fairly accurate in how it reflects my views on each playable version of Ganondorf. My bias for the Warriors games definitely shows. Or maybe I'm just ass at Smash, I don't know. Seeing all the various iterations of Ganondorf and exploring how he has evolved as a playable character was a fun little endeavor, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to play as one of gaming history's most iconic villains.